not die for our sins, and that he appears to have risen again. If you don't believe that, or I would say if you don't believe any part of it, you really are not a Christian. And you try and get someone to get up and say they believe all that. You try it. I couldn't get them to do it.
I would say that there are at least 60 million people who would call themselves evangelical Christians, the subject of my book, for whom those very things would be very basic, a starting point for their belief.
I'm not sure it's very strongly held, though, is my impression with these people, especially in Dixie.
But your point is, if you're correct, then those who say that they're religious, or Christian in this case, but really are not, according to your definition, those are the ones who you ascribe the good deeds. Those who actually do hold those, what you call fundamentalist beliefs, would be responsible or co-travelers with those who have committed atrocities through the years in the name of religion.
Oh, no, I don't think that. I mean, I think there are a lot of evangelicals who do great work. I mean, for example, on the question of Darfur, which preoccupied me very much, we've just been producing a special issue on Africa for Vanity Fair. It's undoubtedly been the Christian evangelical movement who's kept this subject in the headlines. In fact, in general, the subject of slavery in Africa, too, and child trafficking and so on. They've been very good about it. They're almost the only people who do anything to help the North Koreans as well. The pathetic few refugees who managed to get out of North Korea and unwanted everywhere else. Generally, these people try and help them. Though I was pleased to see an interview with a North Korean defector who said that he was very grateful for the help that he was getting from these Christian missionaries, but that he wished they'd stop going on about this dear leader that they seem to have, because he could quite do without any more of that. I've been in North Korea. I'm one of the very few people who has. It's the most religious state I've ever seen. It's only two people short of a trinity. They have a dead father as president and a son, reincarnation, as the head of the party and the army. And everything is organized for worship on a full-time daily basis, and everything you get, which is very little, you have to thank them for. Now I know what it would be like, the Christian paradise. As hellish as I suspected it would all along be.
So the fact that you, as you just did, acknowledge that there are Christians who do good things, take some noble positions and helpful and productive positions.
Yes.
Does that seem to run counter to
No.
your subtitle, how religion poisons everything?
No, it doesn't. I'll give you two examples. I'll phrase you. This is my challenge question that I've evolved on this tour, and I've put it on the Christianity Today website exchange now, and I've started doing it at every stop. You have to, in order to win the prize, I haven't decided what the prize is yet. Could be sex with me, could be, who knows. But you have to do this to win. You have to come up with a moral action taken, performed, or a moral statement made by a believer that could not have been made by an atheist. That's all you have to do. I don't think it can be done myself. There's certainly no takers yet, and I've distributed it fairly widely. The second, you could refer you to my piece on Dr. Martin Luther King in here. I say the person most often brought up against me, so to speak. And I say, well, fortunately, he did not believe in the book of Exodus from which he was quoting, about the freeing of his people and the letting of them go, because if he'd followed the script of the book of Exodus, he could have promised his people that they could kill, enslave, and confiscate the property of anyone they didn't like who got in their way, which, fortunately for all of us, was not his preachment. Exodus was at best a metaphor for him. We don't know how religious he really was. We know he was very much attacked in his lifetime by the FBI and by the extreme right for keeping so many secular friends, communist and socialist friends. I remember very distinctly people who were written out of the record by this, Bayard Rustin, the great black socialist, and Philip Randolph, who organized the March on Washington. They're the ones who did that. Secularists to a man. And the case for civil rights had already been completely made by secularists. There's no need to say it has a divine sanction. Slavery and segregation had divine sanction, which you can find in the Bible. Much more to the point. And finally, I think rather condescending belief that black Americans respond best to the pulpit. In some way, they must like it, part of their sense of rhythm or whatever it has had the very bad consequence of privileging charlatans and frauds in religious garb like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, who get a free ride on this basis. So it's actually had very negative cultural consequences for us. So I think quite a strong argument against the view that religion's done good in this case.
But it strikes me that to try to remove or diminish any religious aspect from the motivation of Martin Luther King, or certainly from many of the people who followed him, is an argument really of necessity to uphold your view, as opposed to, I mean, surely you can't make a generalization that Martin Luther King, and especially people who followed him of whatever race, divorced from their decision to get involved and to lay their bodies on the line in the civil rights movement, were making that on a strictly humanist position without any religious basis.
No, the religious influence of it was actually called the Southern Christian Leadership Congress. Religious influence was very strong. But I don't think that makes any difference to my argument at all. And it certainly doesn't. It leaves my challenge unaffected. Had the case not been already made, for example, same with slavery. The founders of the leaders of the American Anti-Slavery Society were people like Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine, who were very notably not Christian or religious. Case against slavery was complete when all Christian churches institutionally supported and profited from slavery. If the Christians later get a conscience about that, people like Wilberforce, and think they better do something about it while remaining Christian, fine by me.
A moment ago I mentioned that...
if that doesn't sound rather grand of me, I mean... All right, Mr. Wilberforce, that's okay, I suppose.
One of the criticisms that has been leveled with against your thesis a number of quarters is, we've already referred to it, the fact that you seem to be oversimplifying the caricature that you're drawing of religious people is somewhat oversimplified, one-dimensional, in a way that does suit your argument, obviously. So that, in other words, well, the Washington Post, I won't take time to read from their review, but they noted in their review that if people were to take your book as gospel, then they would have to. Their phrase, not mine. That one would have to believe that all Catholics would support the Spanish Inquisition, that all Protestants, being going right on down the line with supporting the various atrocities and would be party to it, which of course is not the case. I don't think that you're really trying to make that argument, but it certainly seems to follow from what you're saying.
Well, all Catholics at the time did support the Inquisition. Not the disappointment I make in the book. That gentleman, this is the author of the book on religious literacy. He's the only one who's refused point blank to debate with me. And it wasn't a scheduling conflict either. He wouldn't come out. He would not come out to play. I'm on his case. When I get round to it, I'm going to give him a smack.
You say in chapter 17, after describing the various crimes and misdemeanors of religious despots, you say the alternative to these grotesque phenomena is not the chimera of secular dictatorship, but the defense of secular pluralism and of the right not to believe or to be compelled to believe. This defense has now become an urgent and inescapable responsibility, a matter of survival. Of course, you know that you get no argument on that from most religious people, at least in this country. I don't think you would find religious people in this country who would try to make a case for coercing people to, or even intimidating them into belief.
Well, let me give you an example then. You'll remember the case last year of the cartoons in Copenhagen, and the offense taken, actually not the offense taken, the deliberate decision to be offended, and to make that into a provocation that was taken by a local Muslim group, which succeeded in getting the endorsement of the wider Muslim world. Attempts to sabotage the Danish economy, organized assault on the Danish diplomatic community, burning of its embassies in countries where demonstrations are normally not allowed, all kinds of intimidation. Very grave threat, I thought, to free expression in its European heartland. Who takes what position here? Not one American magazine or newspaper would even reprint the cartoons, because it was said, I know why it was. It was a combination of fear of reprisal and fear of offending the religious, which often comes to the same thing. The whole of my profession sold out on this completely, in a time when we have a totally image-dominated media and the story was about images. We're not going to show them to you because to show you what the fuss is about. And the one magazine